My brother's coach paralyzed him during practice, and 6 months later, my dad married her. She took over our house, tried to remake me into my brother's shadow, and acted like we owed her everything. Until I discovered her darkest secret and pulled an Uno reverse so devastating. It destroyed her reputation, her career, and her marriage to my dad. My brother Ethan was once the fastest swimmer in the state. Now, he can barely look at water without his hands trembling. His injury occurred during practice when Veronica, our assistant coach, insisted he attempt a risky, cutting-edge dive she claimed would shave precious seconds off his time. Dad was in the bleachers, beaming with pride, watching his golden boy arch through the air as he always did, until he didn't. One moment, he was a champion. The next, he was floating face down as the whole team screamed. Doctors said he was fortunate to have any sensation below the chest. Lucky they called it. But when I observe Ethan staring at his unmoving legs each morning, I see no luck. I see my brother who lost everything. And then, 6 months after the accident, Dad married her. He stood at the altar with the woman who shattered his son. He said we needed stability, that she understood our pain. She moved in with her protein shakes and complete lack of empathy. Immediately, she packed away all of Ethan's trophies, calling them a barrier to recovery. His weight room was transformed into her home office, which she labeled progress. Ethan offered no resistance. He simply retreated to his room and closed the door. I attempted to bring him food the first week, but she intercepted me, claiming he needed tough love. Dad agreed, treating her words like scripture, even as Ethan's weight dropped daily. Then, without consultation, she signed me up for the swim team, declaring I had potential and would waste my talent if I didn't train. Dad believed it was a splendid idea, saying it helped me maintain focus. No one seemed to care that entering that pool felt like stepping into the scene of my brother's tragedy. Veronica became my personal coach, timing my laps, criticizing my form, constantly drawing comparisons to Ethan. Your brother wouldn't have quit, she'd yell whenever I gasped for air. Secretly, I began wearing Ethan's old team jacket, just to feel close to him. Some nights, I'd slip into his room and find him writing in a notebook, which he'd quickly close the moment I approached. She once caught me bringing him food, making me dispose of it, stating he could eat at the table if he desired, fully aware he hadn't left his room in weeks. So, I played along, setting the table for 4, smiling through dinners where they discussed vacation plans as if our family wasn't falling apart. Then, I suggested something that finally made Veronica's composed demeanor falter, an adaptive swim meet for injured athletes. The team was enthusiastic, especially after 2 more kids withdrew due to injuries from Veronica's training. But when I mentioned it at dinner, her fork froze midair, and Dad's face went pale. She labeled it patronizing and stated she had already scheduled a training camp that weekend for serious swimmers. I asserted that Ethan deserved to swim again, even if it was different now. Dad slammed his fist on the table, making the glasses jump. He declared Ethan's injury was due to a lack of discipline. Veronica chimed in, smiling her cold smile, and said Ethan needed to accept reality. At that moment, something crashed in Ethan's room. We heard his wheelchair scraping across the floor as he withdrew further into whatever refuge he had left. The next day at practice, Veronica announced we would be learning advanced dive techniques. I knew what was coming. She demonstrated the exact maneuver that had fractured Ethan's spine. Marcus, who had been on deck that day, turned ghostly white. When he attempted to leave, she blocked him, warning that quitters would be reported to scouts. Then she pointed at me. Show them how a real athlete handles fear. I froze on that platform, every cell screaming. All I could see was Ethan's body hitting the water incorrectly. I climbed down, informing her I was quitting. In the parking lot, Marcus caught up to me, pulling out his phone and revealing everything. Footage of Veronica forcing kids into dangerous drills. Injury reports she never filed. Emails concealing them from parents. 2 kids had permanent damage, and their families had been paid off discreetly. Then he showed me her employment history, fired from 2 programs for safety violations. I rushed home to tell Dad everything, but Ethan's door was ajar, and the notebook he had kept hidden for months was gone. I found him in the garage trying to burn it. I snatched the pages before they turned to ash, and he broke down. Through tears, he confided the truth. The dive Veronica made him perform was banned, removed from competition after causing multiple spinal injuries. He had discovered this at a swim camp and confronted her that morning, threatening to report her. She told him to perform it one more time to prove he was mistaken. Then she stood there and remained silent while he positioned himself incorrectly. She allowed it to happen. He had stayed quiet because Dad was finally smiling again, because he didn't want to ruin the one thing that still made Dad proud. I stood there in the garage, holding those charred pages while Ethan hyperventilated in his chair. The evidence in my hands felt heavier than concrete. Photos of other injured kids. Medical reports with Veronica's signature. Training schedules marked with techniques that had been outlawed for years. My hands trembled as I flipped through what remained. Each page, another nail in her coffin. The garage door hummed to life. Veronica's car pulled into the driveway, her headlights cutting through the smoke still rising from the metal trash can. Ethan gripped my wrist hard enough to bruise. I shoved the papers inside my jacket and helped him back to his room. Both of us moved faster than we had in months. That night at dinner, I pushed food around my plate while Veronica discussed the new season. She mentioned implementing some exciting team-building exercises, her voice bright with artificial enthusiasm. Dad nodded along, cutting his steak as she described the immense potential of this year's swimmers. Every word felt like a hidden message for something darker. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. After dinner, I cornered Dad in his study. The words tumbled out in a rush. The band techniques, the cover-ups, the other injured children. His face transformed from confused to angry as I spoke faster, my voice rising. He held up a hand to stop me, telling me that grief was making me paranoid, that I needed to seek help for these delusions. The door clicked shut between us before I could show him the evidence. The next morning brought a new crisis. Ethan's physical therapist called about insurance approval. They required documentation of family support and stability. Without it, his sessions would cease. I stared at the forms while Veronica hummed in the kitchen, already dressed for morning practice. The choice felt impossible: pursue the truth or help my brother walk again. I signed the papers, completing every form, describing our stable, supportive household. Each lie scraped against my throat. But Ethan needed those sessions. Veronica found me at the kitchen table with the completed paperwork. She smiled and patted my shoulder, commending my maturity, saying it showed I was learning to let go of the past and focus on healing. The word tasted like poison in her mouth. 3 days later, everything erupted at once. Ethan's wheelchair motor died during breakfast. Dad was called away for a work emergency, just as the repair service stated they couldn't come for hours. My phone buzzed with an urgent text from Marcus. Urgent developments. Need to meet immediately. I looked between my brother, stranded at the table, and my phone screen. I made my choice. I spent 2 hours jury-rigging Ethan's chair with duct tape and a power drill, while Marcus's texts grew more frantic. By the time I got the motor working, he had stopped responding. When I finally checked my phone, there was one last message. Never mind. Talk to your stepmom. I was wrong about everything. The next week, Veronica had a panic attack during Ethan's medical appointment. Real tears, trembling hands, the full display. The nurses rushed to comfort her as she sobbed about the difficulty of watching him suffer, how she blamed herself daily. The medical staff absorbed it, whispering about what a devoted stepmother she was. Even Ethan seemed touched, reaching out to squeeze her hand. That's when he began defending her. I had pressed too hard one night, demanding he tell Dad the truth. He turned on me instead, reminding me how Veronica had been there during his darkest moments while I was at school, how she had held his hand through the worst of the pain, how she understood his loss in a way I couldn't. Each word cut deeper than the last. I found my proof by accident. Veronica had left her coaching certification material spread across the dining room table. Right there, bookmarked and highlighted, was the Swimming Federation rule book. The band technique section was tabbed with sticky notes. My hands yearned to grab it, to photograph every page, but touching it would prove I had been snooping through her belongings. I pulled out my phone anyway, captured 3 photos before the front door opened. Veronica stood there, gym bag over her shoulder, watching me with those cold eyes. She didn't yell, didn't accuse, just walked over and gathered her materials while I remained frozen. At dinner, she expressed concern about my obsessive behavior, how violating privacy was a serious sign of instability. Dad agreed I needed boundaries. The family group chat became her weapon after that. Every message I sent was screenshotted and reframed. My questions about Ethan's care became evidence of my inability to accept professional medical opinions. My offers to help with transportation proved I didn't trust Veronica's judgment. She constructed a narrative message by message, and I watched it unfold in real time. When I tried contacting the Swimming Federation directly, the school counselor called me in. Veronica had expressed worry about my fixation on past trauma. They had noticed my declining grades, my isolation from peers. The counselor spoke gently about grief manifesting as conspiracy theories, mentioning that my behavior reminded them of how I had acted after Grandma died, when I had convinced myself the hospital had made mistakes. Veronica's next move hit harder. She began questioning whether Ethan's therapy was worth the cost, suggesting to Dad that they should review treatment options, perhaps find more affordable alternatives. As the insurance policyholder, Dad had every right to make those decisions. The threat hung over every interaction, cooperate, or watch Ethan lose his only chance at recovery. I stopped sleeping, started seeing threats everywhere. When I encountered swim team parents at the grocery store, I tried explaining what Veronica had done. The words came out jumbled and desperate. Other shoppers stared as my voice rose, and I grabbed a mother's arm to make her listen. Security escorted me out as whispers followed. Within hours, the school Facebook group had 47 comments about my public breakdown. Marcus's father called that night, telling me his son would not be providing any statements. He couldn't risk his swimming scholarship over drama and false accusations. I heard Marcus in the background, voice thick with tears, saying he believed me but couldn't lose his future. Another ally gone. Then I caught Veronica in a lie. She had claimed to be driving to practice when Ethan had called her that morning, but security footage from the pool showed her car already in the lot. It was small, but it was something. I celebrated finding that single inconsistency, feeling hope for the first time in weeks. Our neighbor saw me smiling in the driveway and mentioned it to Dad, as proof that I wasn't grieving appropriately. The truth struck me during another sleepless night. We were locked in a war where retreat meant destruction. Veronica had made the rules clear: submit to her version of reality or lose everything. I stared at the ceiling, holding those burned notebook pages, and realized I was running out of options. Every path forward meant sacrifice. Every choice came with a cost I couldn't calculate. But somewhere in another room, my brother sat in his broken chair, still protecting the woman who had destroyed his life, and I knew with cold certainty that this was only the beginning. Veronica started volunteer coaching at Ethan's adaptive sports program the following week. I watched from the parking lot as she wheeled him inside, her hand gentle on his shoulder. Through the window, I saw her kneel beside other injured athletes, demonstrating modified techniques with genuine patience. She quoted Ethan's favorite motivational phrases naturally, as if she had always known them. The other families gravitated toward her warmth. My stomach churned as I realized she was gathering their stories, their vulnerabilities, building an arsenal of manipulative material disguised as compassion. That evening, Dad inquired about the argument we had during breakfast. I explained my concerns about Veronica's coaching methods. He relayed his own version of the same conversation, where apparently I had been screaming accusations while throwing dishes. Both of us believed our memories were accurate. The discrepancy made my head spin. I started recording myself on my phone, needing proof that my version of reality still existed. Catherine, my closest friend since middle school, forwarded me screenshots from our old group chat. There I was, 2 years ago, gushing about Veronica being the best coach our team ever had, praising her dedication, her innovative techniques, her ability to push us beyond our limits. The messages felt as if they had been written by a stranger. Catherine's accompanying text was gentle but clear. She needed Veronica's professional reference for her daughter's special needs swimming program. Another ally neutralized. During Sunday dinner at Dad's sister's house, my 5-year-old cousin Nathan climbed into my lap. He chatted about swimming lessons, then mentioned how Auntie Veronica said I had been sick with worry lately and wasn't thinking clearly. The words, coming from his innocent mouth, made them sharper. Even the children were being programmed with her narrative. I discovered the doorbell camera footage by accident while helping Dad troubleshoot the app. There I was, clearly leaving the house immediately after finding Ethan with a burned notebook, not staying to comfort him as I had claimed. My own memories were becoming unreliable. The timestamp showed I had abandoned my brother in his moment of crisis. Veronica had been the one to find him, to hold him while he cried. The evidence supported her version of events. The school counselor filed a report about my obsessive accusations affecting family stability. The words potential parental alienation appeared in official documentation. I learned this when Dad's lawyer mentioned it during a consultation about updating insurance policies. The system was documenting my breakdown in real time. Late one night, I used the family computer to search for swimming safety regulations. Ethan's accounts were still logged in, his browser history exposed. The autocomplete revealed his last searches: banned diving techniques, spinal injuries, swimming accidents, how to report unsafe coaching. The dates aligned with a week before his accident. He had known. He had been researching, preparing to act. The realization that I could have helped him sooner made me vomit. Veronica's public coaching blog became my obsession. She wrote eloquently about overcoming challenges, learning from setbacks, turning tragedy into growth. Between the lines, I read admissions. Phrases like, sometimes we must take risks to achieve greatness, and those who aren't willing to push boundaries will never reach their potential. She was confessing in plain sight, wrapped in inspirational language. My therapist received a subpoena. The court wanted records of our sessions, specifically any concerning statements I had made about my stepmother. I had been seeing Dr. Chun since Grandma's death, trusting her with my darkest thoughts. Now those private moments would become evidence of my instability. The betrayal felt intentional, orchestrated. I attempted to record a conversation with Veronica about Ethan's care schedule. My phone screen lit up with the recording app notification just as she glanced over. She smiled, cold and knowing, then continued talking about pickup times and therapy appointments as if nothing had happened. Later, Dad lectured me about trust and boundaries. The recording attempt became proof of my paranoia. Ethan's physical therapy schedule created unexpected leverage. Veronica controlled transportation access, deciding whether he made it to appointments. She never explicitly threatened to skip sessions, but the possibility hung between us. I started tracking her movements, noting when she arrived late or took unnecessary detours. Building my own evidence file felt like adopting her tactics. The pool maintenance worker, Jonathan, had been there the day Ethan got hurt. I had tracked him down, convinced him to talk about the safety protocols that had been ignored. 2 days after our meeting, an anonymous complaint was filed about his work performance. He called me, voice shaking, explaining he had 3 kids and couldn't afford to lose his job. He apologized, but said he couldn't help anymore. Another witness silenced. One morning, I noticed Veronica wearing Ethan's old team sweatshirt to bed. Dad's dresser now displayed photos from Ethan's swimming victories, medals arranged like a shrine. She had absorbed his achievements into their bedroom, claiming his history as part of their shared story. The appropriation felt like grave robbing. Veronica offered a deal. She had arranged a closure meeting between Ethan and his former teammates if I dropped my accusations. She painted it as therapeutic, a chance for him to reconnect with his swimming family. When I refused, she sighed sadly. Dad heard about it secondhand, how I was selfishly preventing Ethan's healing and social reintegration. My refusal became evidence of my cruelty. I discovered my memory of the accident timing was off by 30 minutes. The trauma had scrambled the sequence, though the events remained accurate. This small discrepancy became Veronica's favorite weapon. If I was wrong about the time, what else had I misremembered? The doubt crept in like poison. During a family meeting about Ethan's care, I realized we had all been documenting different things. Ethan had been keeping safety concerns in a cloud account I couldn't access. Veronica had been building a case about my mental state. I had been collecting evidence of her negligence. We were 3 people living in the same house, creating entirely different versions of reality. The evidence painted a complex picture. Ethan had been documenting safety concerns while simultaneously being pressured to help Veronica meet her certification requirements. He had wanted to protect future swimmers, but also needed her recommendation for college scholarships. The situation wasn't black and white. It was a gray mess of compromises and impossible choices. Dad's sister, Catherine, faced her own impossible decision. Supporting my truth meant losing access to her grandchildren. Dad had made that clear. She chose family peace over justice, removing my strongest adult ally. Her apologetic hug felt like a goodbye. She whispered about not being able to lose anyone else after losing Mom. I understood, but felt abandoned anyway. I started using Veronica's manipulation tactics without realizing it. I created false urgency to pressure witnesses. I manufactured chance encounters to access information. The pool facility manager thought our meeting at the coffee shop was coincidental. I had actually been waiting there for 2 hours, knowing his routine, making small talk about family while mentally cataloging every detail he shared about maintenance records. It felt like wearing someone else's skin. Ethan briefly shared his cloud storage password during a therapy session, thinking I needed it for insurance forms. I had minutes to download everything before Veronica would think to check. My hands shook as files transferred. Photos, documents, training schedules, evidence of his terror in the weeks before the accident. Evidence of her systematic pressure. Evidence that would destroy our family completely. Kathy, Ethan's ex-girlfriend, emerged with her own agenda. She had known about his fears before the accident, but had stayed quiet to protect her own swimming career. Now, she wanted to clear her conscience without taking real responsibility. Her selective memory served no one but herself. Fighting battles on multiple fronts meant sacrificing my own health. I missed crucial medical appointments, too consumed with gathering evidence to manage my chronic anxiety properly. The medical system marked me as a non-compliant patient. Another mark against my credibility. My credit cards maxed out from copying fees and legal consultations. Meanwhile, Veronica used family accounts for household expenses, maintaining financial control. I couldn't even afford to print the evidence I had gathered. The practical barriers to justice felt intentionally designed. A public confrontation at Ethan's favorite restaurant traumatized the staff, who remembered him from happier times. I had seen Veronica there with Dad, laughing over lunch while Ethan sat at home. My emotional outburst became local gossip. The manager, who had cheered at Ethan's meets, asked me not to return. Another safe space lost. My part-time job at the bookstore ended when the owner cited excessive personal drama affecting workplace performance. My replacement happened to have connections to Veronica's coaching network. The termination felt orchestrated but unprovable. Income gone, references damaged, future prospects dimming. Couch surfing with friends, while Veronica redecorated our family home, felt like exile. She removed the remaining traces of Ethan's swimming career, replacing them with generic motivational posters. Each change erased more of who we had been before she arrived. Dad begged me to let Ethan rest and heal in peace. His words echoed with exhaustion and pain. He accused me of torturing all of us with this obsession. The conversation ended with him asking me not to come home until I could act like family again. The dismissal cut deeper than any argument. My investigation caused Jonathan, the pool maintenance worker, to be suspended pending investigation. His daughter asked why Daddy couldn't work anymore. His wife posted on social media about unfair treatment, bills piling up, stress destroying their marriage. I had dragged an innocent family into our war. The collateral damage spread like ripples. The workers' family strained under lost income and community judgment. They were now associated with our family's drama, marked by proximity to scandal. Local parents whispered about the unstable family, making wild accusations. Jonathan's kids faced questions at school about their dad's involvement. I had poisoned their life by seeking truth despite knowing my actions were destroying other family stability. I couldn't stop pursuing evidence. The addiction to justice overrode empathy. Each small victory required greater sacrifices from innocent bystanders. I was becoming the villain in their stories. My aunt asked the question that shattered my certainty. What if you're wrong about this? The pause before I could answer stretched too long. She noticed my hesitation, saw doubt creep across my face. That moment of uncertainty became another weapon in Veronica's arsenal. Even I wasn't sure anymore. Publicly admitting to past mistakes in family crisis management became necessary to maintain any credibility. I acknowledged overreacting to Grandma's death, seeing conspiracies where none existed. The admission felt like handing Veronica ammunition, but honesty was all I had left. The evidence I had found revealed my own failures, too. I had missed signs of Ethan's pre-accident distress. He tried telling me about his coaching concerns, but I had been too focused on my own training to really listen. The guilt of that realization. Why didn't I notice he was scared? Threatened to drown me. Veronica's lawyer filed an emergency motion, moving family mediation up by 2 months. My potential advocate, a family friend who understood the situation, was out of state for military deployment. The timing felt deliberately calculated to catch me without support. Her motivation emerged through careful observation. Veronica genuinely wanted to be Ethan's real parent figure after years of devotion to the swimming program. She had never had children of her own, had poured everything into coaching. The accident had broken her, too, in ways I was only beginning to understand. The truth was messier than I had wanted to admit. Veronica showed authentic care for athletes mixed with desperate need for family acceptance after her own childhood abandonment. She wasn't purely evil. She was damaged, seeking belonging through control. Understanding her humanity made fighting her harder. I had to become the manipulative strategist Ethan would hate to achieve any kind of justice. I broke my promise to him about always staying honest. I used people's trust against them. I gathered information through deception. My idealistic self died piece by piece, replaced by a pragmatic truth seeker willing to play dirty. The old me, who believed in fairness and direct confrontation, couldn't survive this fight against systemic protection. Every institution defended Veronica. The coaching establishment, the medical system, even our family structure. Fighting them required becoming like them. Evidence arrived from an unexpected source. Veronica's daughter from a previous relationship, visiting for spring break, mentioned seeing her mother practice the scary dive alone at the pool. The child's innocent comment about mommy getting the splash wrong multiple times revealed Veronica had known the technique's dangers through personal experience. A minor legal victory felt hollow when I witnessed Veronica's genuine tears at Ethan's bedside. Both of us crying while he slept, both believing we were protecting him. The shared moment of raw emotion complicated my hatred. We were two people who loved him, expressing it through destruction. Veronica's counter-narrative gained traction with a family mediator. The professional saw a devoted stepmother trying to help her family heal versus an obsessed sibling unable to accept tragedy. My evidence looked like conspiracy theories next to her measured concern. The system's bias toward maintaining family units worked against me. Everything depended on the pool facility manager's willingness to testify about safety protocol violations. He held the key to proving systematic negligence versus an isolated accident. But his job, his family stability, His entire future hung in the balance. I was asking him to sacrifice everything for a truth that might not even bring justice. My past kindness to Veronica's daughter became leverage in the war. The child asked why I was trying to hurt her mom, who loved Uncle Ethan so much. Her innocent questions, clearly coached but genuinely felt, made me look like the aggressor. Using a child's affection as a weapon felt particularly cruel. The swimming community split along predictable lines. Those whose jobs depended on coaching solidarity backed Veronica. Those who had lost children to preventable injuries supported me quietly, afraid to speak publicly. The divide revealed how deeply systemic protection ran through the sport. I discovered the legal system's limitations firsthand. Civil court required a different burden of proof than criminal charges. Family disputes needed evidence of immediate danger, not past negligence. The structures designed to protect families also shielded abusers who stayed within certain boundaries. Using Ethan's former teammate connections felt like calling in debts to his memory. We're calling in his marker for friendship, I explained to those who had loved him. They provided partial support, but wouldn't risk college recruitment opportunities with full testimony. Half-truths from half-allies produced half-justice. The partial help revealed something crucial. Ethan knew about the technique's dangers, but stayed to protect other swimmers from similar risks. He had been documenting violations, not for personal vindication, but to prevent future injuries. His sacrifice had been intentional, calculated to save others. The audio file was buried in Ethan's cloud storage, labeled innocuously as Practice Notes March 15th. My hands trembled as I clicked play. Static crackled. Then Veronica's voice filled my earbuds, clear and commanding. She was insisting Ethan perform the dive again, despite his protests about feeling unsafe. His voice, younger and stronger than I had heard in months, explained the technique had been banned. Her response chilled me. She knew, had always known, but winning mattered more than safety. I downloaded everything, creating multiple backups on different drives. The timestamp showed this recording was made 3 days before his accident. 3 days when I could have intervened if I had paid attention. The weight of that knowledge pressed against my chest. Ethan's browser history revealed more horror. He had spent his final week researching spinal cord injury statistics, rehabilitation centers, insurance coverage for catastrophic injuries. He had known what was coming. The searches grew more desperate each night. How to refuse unsafe coaching, reporting coach to swimming federation, legal protection for minor athletes. He had been trapped between protecting his teammates and protecting himself. I realized then what his sacrifice meant. He had stayed not out of weakness, but strategic calculation. If he had quit, Veronica would have moved on to the next promising swimmer. By staying, documenting, gathering evidence, he had created the paper trail that could save others. His paralysis wasn't meaningless. It was the price of protecting every kid who came after. The insurance documents provided unexpected ammunition. Veronica had filed an amended claim 2 weeks ago, trying to increase coverage for Ethan's ongoing care. Her new statement about the accident's circumstances contradicted her original report. The notarized signatures on both documents proved she had lied under oath, either then or now. Insurance fraud carried real penalties, created real leverage. I organized everything methodically: audio files, browser history, insurance documents, training schedules, witness statements. Each piece alone seemed circumstantial, but together they painted an undeniable picture. I created a timeline, cross-referenced every claim, built a case that even Dad couldn't dismiss as paranoia. The pool facility manager finally agreed to meet after I mentioned the insurance investigation. His maintenance logs from that day showed the diving platforms hadn't been inspected in months. Safety equipment was overdue for replacement. He had been pressured to falsify inspection dates after the accident. Now facing potential liability, he chose self-preservation over loyalty to the coaching staff. Insurance investigators moved faster than any other system. They had money at stake. They didn't care about family dynamics or coaching politics. When I presented the contradictory claims, they launched their own investigation within days. Their forensic accountants found more discrepancies. Equipment purchases that never arrived. Safety training sessions that never happened. Funds diverted to personal accounts. The mediation date arrived like a storm front. Dad had hired lawyers. Veronica had hired better ones. The conference room felt too small for all our accumulated grievances. I sat across from them, my evidence boxes stacked like ammunition. Ethan waited in the hallway, his presence both weapon and wound. Family members filled the remaining seats, forced to choose sides publicly. The mediator, a tired woman who had seen too many families destroy themselves, established ground rules. No raised voices. No accusations without evidence. No leaving until resolution. The seating arrangement revealed everything. Dad and Veronica united on one side, me isolated on the other. Extended family scattered between loyalty and truth. I presented my case methodically, played the audio recording without commentary, let Ethan's young voice fill the room, showed the browser history, the desperate searches, the evidence of premeditation, displayed the insurance documents side by side, highlighting the contradictions. The pool manager's testimony via video call confirmed the safety violations. Each piece of evidence landed like a physical blow. Veronica's hands shook as the evidence mounted. Her lawyer tried interrupting, objecting to relevance, questioning authenticity. The insurance investigator shut him down, confirming their independent verification of the documents. They had already flagged the claim for fraud investigation. Criminal charges were possible. The moment of breakdown came when I played the second audio file. Ethan had recorded himself the night before the accident, creating a video diary in case something happened. His face, young and terrified, on my laptop screen, explaining everything. The band technique, Veronica's threats about scholarships, his fear for younger teammates. He had known exactly what would happen, had chosen to go through with it anyway to protect others. Veronica crumbled. Not the calculated tears from the medical appointments, but genuine collapse. She rocked in her chair, mumbling about just wanting to win, just wanting to matter, just wanting a family who needed her. Dad reached for her automatically, then froze as the implications hit him. His son had sacrificed himself, and he had married the woman responsible. The mediator called a recess. In the hallway, family members avoided eye contact. Some whispered apologies for not believing me. Others stayed loyal to Dad, unable to accept the truth, even with evidence screaming from every surface. Ethan sat silent in his chair, tears streaming as he heard his own voice predicting his fate. When we reconvened, the insurance company's position was clear. They would pursue fraud charges unless a settlement was reached immediately. Veronica's coaching certification would be revoked. The swimming program faced investigation. Financial restitution was required. The lawyers haggled over numbers while we sat in the wreckage of our family. An expert witness joined by video to authenticate the audio recordings. Voice analysis confirmed authenticity. The diving technique violated 6 different safety protocols. The pattern of injuries at Veronica's previous programs showed clear negligence. Her lawyer stopped objecting, started negotiating damage control. Veronica's breakdown revealed the deeper truth. She spoke in fragments about her own coach decades ago, who had pushed her until her shoulders separated. How she had never swam again, had channeled everything into coaching. How she had convinced herself that tough love created champions. How Ethan reminded her of herself before the injury. So much potential, so much to lose. She had been reliving her own trauma through him, perpetuating the cycle. The mediator offered me a choice. I could push for maximum criminal prosecution or accept a rehabilitation-focused resolution. Veronica would lose her coaching certification, but could avoid jail time if she completed intensive therapy and safety training. She would never work with minors again, but might eventually coach adults under supervision. The decision was mine. I thought about Ethan's sacrifice, his calculated choice to protect others. Destroying Veronica completely wouldn't undo his paralysis, but ensuring she got help while removing her from positions of power that honored his intent. I chose rehabilitation with strict monitoring. Ethan nodded from his chair, understanding without words. The immediate consequences unfolded quickly. Supervised visitation schedules, mandatory family counseling, financial settlements. The swimming program faced a full investigation. Other families came forward with similar stories. The coaching community split between those demanding accountability and those protecting the status quo. Our local pool implemented new safety protocols, required additional oversight. Dad's world shattered and reformed. He moved out temporarily, needing space to process his complicity. Some family bonds broke permanently. Relatives who had enabled Veronica's behavior, who dismissed my concerns, who had chosen comfort over truth. Others slowly began healing. Catherine reached out first, admitting she had known something was wrong, but had been too afraid to act. The final mediation session established long-term arrangements. Ethan would receive comprehensive care funding. Veronica faced years of mandated therapy. The Swimming Federation implemented new reporting systems. It wasn't perfect justice. Nothing could give Ethan his legs back, but it was systemic change, the kind he had sacrificed himself to create. I drove Ethan home in silence, his evidence boxes in the trunk. We had won, if you could call it that. Veronica was getting help instead of prison. Dad was in therapy instead of denial. The swimming program faced reform instead of lawsuits. Other kids would be protected. It felt like a hollow victory until Ethan squeezed my hand. Back home, I helped him inside and we sat in his room, surrounded by the remnants of who he used to be. The trophies Veronica had boxed up, the team photos she had hidden. He pulled out a new notebook, showed me pages of plans, adaptive sports programs he wanted to start, safety advocacy work he could do from his chair, ways to transform his sacrifice into lasting change. The truth was messier than I had imagined when this started. Veronica wasn't pure evil. She was damaged, perpetuating harm she had experienced. Dad wasn't simply complicit. He was desperate for happiness after loss. I wasn't a hero. I was a sibling who had almost lost myself fighting for justice. Ethan wasn't just a victim. He was an intentional sacrifice who had calculated the cost of saving others. Months later, I enrolled in advocacy training while Ethan launched his safety foundation. Dad slowly rebuilt trust through actions, not words. Veronica served her sentence through community service and therapy. Some relationships never recovered. Others grew stronger through truth. The pool implemented every safety protocol Ethan had researched. Young swimmers trained without fear. His sacrifice meant something. That had to be enough.